So Brad, obviously we're reading your draft and we're going over 1.0, and let's be honest about it. The reality is that that's your first bite at the apple, right? How many drafts will you do? You will do one right before the draft in April. I know that.
Yeah, I mean, there'll be a couple more, at least two more, probably figure on. Yeah, I mean, one guy texted me, he's like, hey, is this based on something you know?
You know stuff, Brad? I mean, you know stuff?
I'm like, blind guess, bro. Blind guess.
But, Brett, I think it's interesting, though, because you have Will Campbell going to the Bears at 10. And I'm curious, like, based on the people you talk to around the league, is there a building consensus that the first tackle off the board will be Armand Membou from Missouri because of the way he tested and just because of how he has begun to rise?
Well, I think there's a couple factors that go in there. Like Membou, I don't think you can play him at left tackle.
Right.
And I don't think you'd probably want to try. Like, I remember talking to people about him back in, late September, early October. They liked him. They wanted to look at him some more. They thought he might be a guard. Now, I think people feel pretty good about him playing right tackle. But I think it depends a little bit what you need. Like if you need two tackles, yeah, you could take him and plug him in there. But he's popular right now, and as one GM told me at the combine, he said that offensive linemen in the draft in round one aren't much different than quarterbacks from the standpoint that they get overdrafted because everybody needs them. Like of the 32 teams right now, how many are sitting there and they're saying, "Oh yeah, we're good on the O-line"? That's a small handful of teams going into the draft every year. Whether they actively try to get one in the first couple rounds, that's not always the case. But everybody is always hunting offensive linemen.
Yeah, there's truth in that, and the Bears could, obviously you want them to keep going. I wonder, is it fair to ask if Will Campbell can play left tackle in the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, and it's a fair question, and people have said, well, what about the arm length? And fair question, right? But, boy, you watch him do it at LSU, and it sure looks like he can do it, right? You're not projecting a guy from a small conference that played had a big game against Mississippi State, and then they played Rutgers, and those were the two big teams on the schedule that they played. This is a guy who played at an elite level for a while. He's not a one-year starter. So I think if you're drafting him, chances are you're starting him at left tackle, and you see what it looks like anyway, right? And,
right. You would have to do that if you take him at 10.
And it's like, in a lot of these people that talk about, well, his arm length is an issue, are ignoring the fact that there's been some pretty damn good linemen with shorter arms than you would like that have played left tackle in the last, 20 or 30 years in the NFL.
I tend to agree with that, Brad. I think it's an interesting choice, and if he fell to them, they'd be lucky probably to draft him. I also wonder this. In your mock draft, you have Ashton Jeanty going 12 to the Cowboys. How difficult, if that is indeed the case, would it be in your mind, based on who you've talked to, for Ben Johnson to pass on a running back that would give him a dynamic weapon in the backfield?
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend to know how Ben Johnson feels about Jeanty or, his desire to build up that position. But that's got to come down to a number of factors. One, how special is this guy? Like, there's a little bit of recency bias here because, folks this is the greatest running back that's come along, and a long, long time. He's a really good player. There's no question about that. I would think the loud and proud crowd that wanted them to focus on the offensive line in the offseason would probably want them to stick with that in the draft, right? Yeah. Or do we have some flip meet flop where they're going to change their tune, and then if the line isn't fixed for the long haul, they're going to be back again saying these people were idiots that everybody knew they needed to fix the line, because Drew Dahlman looks like a guy who can take care of your center position for this season and hopefully quite a while to come. Tooney, that's a shorter term fix,
yes.
and Jonah Jackson, they've got a lot of faith in, and if you're believing in the coach, you're trusting him there. But he needs to bounce back, and you've got the question mark at left tackle. So you can't go wrong continuing to build the line. The Lions didn't get their fancy toy at the running back position until they had really built up the structure and the backbone of that roster.
That's a good way of putting it. And I, as I have said many times, I have no problem drafting line of scrimmage at number 10, at 39, at 41. And maybe not all offensive linemen, but there are two sides to the line of scrimmage. I know they've improved through free agency, but I don't believe they're done there either.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, is that gets lost in this discussion about Jeanty at 10 that I think some people just kind of ignore. It's a fantastic draft for running backs. It's not a good draft for running backs. It's a great draft. So that being said, like, are you at the point in your program where you can take a running back 10th overall, where you can draft a running back in the first round for the first time since Cedric Benson, which was 2 decades ago? Are they at that point in their program? And I don't know that a foray in a free agency, understanding that they've got some players with really strong track records, high marks on the field, in the locker room, but we tend to get kind of blinded by some of these moves in free agency where we expect them in March and April to be more impactful than they wind up being in October and November. So are they at that point where they can pull the trigger on a running back that high in the draft?
Brad, I love the top 10, but very curious. But same question kind of applies to Tyler Warren, who you have going 7 to the Jets. That's very high for a tight end, unless you're convinced that he's one of these guys that makes your offense instantly dangerous.
Yeah, I think Tyler Warren's interesting because he can impact every down, right? Like he's fantastic in the passing game. He's going to do everything he's called upon and more in the running game. I mean, he's a guy you can't dismiss from any conversation about the Bears at number 10, right? Because he's that total package at the tight end position, which I think is kind of what the Bears like. I think they'll get away from going for this one-dimensional guy, a Jimmy Graham type, a Gerald Everett, guys of that type. I think they're looking for players that can do it all. And I don't know what the chances would be for him, but you'd need to have a conversation about him at 10. I think he's a really good player.
I mean, I don't think it's for 10, but whoever winds up with O'Marion Hampton, it's like you're drafting Derrick Henry. I mean, you see the size of this guy and the athletic ability and the strength. I mean, he's like a man.
Wow. Yeah, he probably goes round 1.
Yes.
That's your second. That's your second running back that's taken, and maybe the Bears are looking at him in a scenario and where there's a trade down.
Right.
I think they probably need to resist the urge to trade up with these three. You're in a really good spot right here.
You don't want to trade up, right?
Picks. Yeah, well, you got 3 picks in the top 41.
Yes.
Just be confident in the process you've put in place to stack your draft board, right, and arrange it, and then attack it, right, and then go get it, and keep your draft capital where it's at.
Brad, I just wonder if you're attaching any significance to the fact that Ben Johnson shows up at a Hawks game and they score a touchdown and win 7-4.
He did. He had
instant offense.
Dave, the Hawks are totally irrelevant, brother. That's
nice.
They're just completely irrelevant.
Excellent.
They won They won yesterday, Brad. Bedard's hot.
Win, lose, or draw, they are irrelevant.
Ben Johnson begs to differ, and he was there. He was there. All right, good stuff, Biggsy.
Yeah.
Love the mock draft.
Good talking to you, buddy. The mock draft is tons of fun. I wonder if more quarterbacks will be taken than you imagine. There's a lot of talk about Jackson Dart moving up. No one would have picked Denver to jump in and take their quarterback, and it happened. And I think there could be a run on the bank, as we always know. Everybody needs a quarterback.
The Steelers need to get involved somehow because they're still trying to move on from Ben Roethlisberger, and maybe Aaron Rodgers lands there. But even if Rodgers does, you've got to
there is next
you got to
year
come up with a solution for that position.
There's always a year after you get a 40-year-old quarterback. Great stuff, Big Z.
See, Brad.
If Rodgers goes to the Steelers, the Bears do have Pittsburgh on the schedule this season.
Yeah, they come to town, I believe.
And
have a great day, guys.
All right,
he
you
owns
too.
them. He owns them.
Well, he may not own them
anymore. I don't know.
With that group. Maybe
just
he'll make the Steelers better.